Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow.
Joe Biden's campaign is lying to you once again, and they're gaslighting. Now they're trying to say that I said black people were doing better under Jim Crow. I never said that. They are lying. Joe Biden does not care about black people. He never has. He cares about power, first, second, and third. They can go somewhere with all that. See ya.
Let me introduce a little bit of Byron Donalds to you, because he made some news yesterday afternoon where he's fighting back to defend himself. And I want you to point out the fact, that he's pushing back against lying Democrats. He's pushing back against the media. He's defending himself and he's getting the truth out there. But at the same time, he's defending you. He's defending conservatives. He's defending Republicans. And he's doing it in a very effective way. Now, this all began with Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, lying about Byron Donalds on the floor of the House of Representatives. Here, take a look.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow. That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be systematically lynched without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when children could be denied a high-quality education without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be denied the right to vote without consequence because of Jim Crow. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. He was talking about Byron Donalds. And let's go right to the beginning again so you can hear the origin lie in this entire 1-minute lying diatribe.
Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow.
Now, he did that whole thing. We were not better off. We were not better off. We were not better off. It was all based on that premise that a leader in the House of Representatives said that black people were better off under Jim Crow. So, did Byron Donalds say that we were better off under Jim Crow? Well, let's check in with Congressman Byron Donalds.
America, Joe Biden's campaign is lying to you once again, and they're gaslighting. Now they're trying to say that I said black people were doing better under Jim Crow. I never said that. They are lying. But why would you be surprised? Because they always lie. This is the same Joe Biden that said, if you don't vote for him, then you ain't black. The man is a liar. Sorry, just call it what it is. What I said is that you had more black families under Jim Crow. And it was the Democrat policies under HEW, under the welfare state, that did help to destroy the black family. That's what I said. And I also said you're seeing a reinvigoration of black families today in America. And that is a good thing. So don't listen to the lies from the Biden administration. I know what I said, and I'll say it straight to camera. They got to run to the Philadelphia Inquirer to move their lies. Joe Biden does not care about black people. He never has. He cares about power, first, second, and third. They can go somewhere with all that. See ya.
Okay. Game on. You got to love Byron Donalds coming right back at it in Hakeem Jeffries' face. He's not having any of it. And later on, he posted exactly what his words were. Now, listen, it should be noted that Hakeem Jeffries clearly knows a lot about Jim Crow, and it's appropriate that a Democrat would be well-versed in Jim Crow, considering Jim Crow was a creation of the Democrats. That's his party, after all, so I guess he knows about it. But here's Byron Donalds. He's sitting here in a cigar lounge, having a little bourbon, smoking a cigar, and he's talking about the state of affairs for black families right now in America. A black man talking to black men about black issues, and here's what he said in reference to Jim Crow.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened. But you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. Wow. But I'm gonna tell you this: growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father. This is about what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to be a father to myself. Wow. And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of Black families with younger Black men and Black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a Black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. That's right. During Jim Crow, more Black people were not just conservative, because Black people always have been conservative minded, but more Black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries as Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more Black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth. I'm looking at my kids. How can my kids be on my shoulders when they take off in life? That's what's happening.
Let me tell you something. What you just heard from Byron Donalds is absolute toxic nuclear waste for Democrats. The last thing they want is for people to hear what Byron Donalds just said about the importance of fathers in the household and intact families, about fathers being in the home raising their children. This is why they're lying about him. By the way, you heard the reference to Jim Crow. Did you hear Byron Donalds say that Black people were better off under Jim Crow? Did you hear him say that ever at all? Of course, they're lying about him, because that's what they do about conservatives, especially if you're a Black conservative or a female conservative or an Asian conservative or a Latino conservative, because you're the worst kind of people ever. Look at how they demonize Clarence Thomas, right? They keep the worst vitriolic insults for people who just dare to roam off from where they're supposed to stay, right? They don't want any, especially minority voters, they don't want Black voters to hear Byron Donalds say this. Because the most important demographic in voting right now, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's not based on your race. It's not based on your religion. It's not based on your ethnicity or your immigration status or your nation of origin or any of those things, or your age for that matter. Do you know what the most important demographic is for how you vote, Republican or Democrat? It's your marital status. Your marital status, especially if you're a woman. If you are a married man, you vote Republican. If you are a married woman, by a smaller margin, you vote Republican. If you are a single man, you tend to vote Republican. But if you are an unmarried woman, especially an unmarried mother, you're voting Democrat. That's why you see so many policies from the Democratic Party pandering to that demographic. And if there is a new revival, a renaissance, an incredibly positive and constructive renaissance of marriages staying intact, and especially in minority communities, if men stay home, they get married, they raise their families, like Byron Donalds is advocating here, that's the end of the Democratic Party. It's the end of the major. By the way, that's one of the reasons why you see them trying to venture out and create new coalitions, new identity politics. You know, this is why they're trying to build the LGBTQ community to support them. It's why they're trying to go after Muslim voters now and pander to them, because they got to find new, because they see where it's going big time. So Byron Donalds, then, now that you've seen exactly what he said, he is coming right at him. This is, again, another reason why Donald Trump likes this guy and why he's on the short list for vice president, because he goes right at him. He doesn't back down. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't say, let me just say my words were probably misconstrued. What I meant to say was, no, none of that crap. He comes right at him and goes right to the media like he did here with CNN last night. And watch how he He doesn't defend himself. In fact, he goes on the offensive. Watch how he does it.
One thing I really want to just get you to address is there were a lot of people who heard what you had to say, and a lot of them are offended by the idea that you would repeat Jim Crow 3 times in your comments as if to suggest that that was a time period because that Black families were, in your words, together, because in your words, Black people were not just more conservative, they voted more conservatively. That's a good thing. I mean, it sounds like nostalgia. Do you regret using that time frame as a reference?
Nobody ever made nostalgia. That was never the point. It wasn't even about that. So where now I'm going to get my backup is I didn't say that. I didn't even insinuate that. That is where the media and yes, Hakeem Jeffries and a lot of other people are taking
what exactly didn't you
insinuate?
insinuate? I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. What didn't you insinuate?
The premise of your question, I did not insinuate. That is what people are trying to weave into what I said. What I said is crystal clear. It's on my social media. Go to @Byron Donalds on X. You can see the full clip. Abby, I appreciate you playing the full clip. What you are dealing with right now is a political environment where now anything I might say or any major surrogate might say is going to be twisted into the lens of race. That was never the point, not the idea
I just want to,
whatsoever.
just to clarify my questioning of you.
Sure.
I mean, I understand that this idea that you said it was better, you didn't use the words better. But when you talk about that time period, you're suggesting that because the Black family was together, they were better off than they are now.
See, this is the problem, Abby.
So are you saying that that's not the case? That the Black family was not better off when they were, in your words, together?
Abby, let me put it to you like this.
In the Jim Crow era.
Let's agree on something. I am, obviously one of the better communicators in the Republican Party. I know how to put words together. I do it very, very often. So I'm not going to say something that I do not agree with. What America is seeing right now, especially Black America, is the gaslighting that unfortunately does happen in politics, where you take my comments and you want to weave your own political viewpoint into what I said. I said is very...
Let me just jump in here real fast, if I may interrupt, because I want to interrupt to point out how she keeps interrupting him. And by the way, and she knows exactly what she's doing. This is a trick that media hosts do, cable news hosts especially, because not only is she jumping in and interrupting him and not letting him finish what he said. He said 3 times now he's tried to say what he's saying, and she completely interrupted him. But also, this is a satellite feed. There's a delay. She's in where is she? In New York, and he's in Nashville. And there's always like a little second. You can see the delay where he's waiting to hear her. He's trying to be polite, and she continues to interrupt him. Because again, the last thing they want is for him to actually communicate his ideas and what he's saying. And let me just, and he's going to finish, he can speak for himself, but let me just say, the whole Jim Crow reference, I got it when he was saying it. The point he was making us, things were awful under Jim Crow, where we were in segregation. We didn't have rights. We weren't able to use the same drinking fountain or the bathroom in Democrat-run states. We weren't able to vote. We were all of these things that were awful. And yet somehow, even then, we were able to keep our families intact. Things were worse off for Black people then, but we knew the importance of family. What's our excuse right now? That's what he's saying. Not that we're better off, but despite the hardships, our families stuck together. Was obviously what he was saying. Why are they trying to twist the words? Why are they injecting their own definition of what he said or interpretation of what he said? Because they don't want that out there. They don't want people to know that, because then they lose.
I asked you to explain because I wanted to, I want to undo is understand what you're saying here. Because if you're making a comparison, you're saying the Black family was together then, they're not together now. And you're using that to try to say that things are bad now. Well, first of all, let me just to set the table here. By pretty much every available measure, Black families, Black individuals in this country are better off today than they were during Jim Crow. Would you agree with that?
Abby, of course I would. I'm not making that point. And this is the problem.
What the Democrats, what Hakeem Jeffries did on the House floor, what Jamie Harrison, what the president of the NAACP, what the Biden campaign, because they're the ones who started this. It was really the Biden campaigns who were trying to cherry pick everything. They're trying to twist my words into saying something. I never said that. What I was talking about was specifically Black families. And the point that Black families being together is a great thing for the Black community. And you do have to acknowledge the empirical fact that before Lyndon Johnson's policies and the welfare state that was created in the United States, I'm not talking about good, bad, or indifferent.
What about,
Black families were, Black marriage rates were significantly higher.
Well, what
They're
about other
rising
things that
again
might
in
have,
America. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that.
Do you notice again exactly where she decides to cut him off? Right as he's finishing making his point about how when Lyndon Johnson ushered in dependency on the federal government, that's when everything started to fall apart for the Black families in America. Every single time he tries to get to that point, she jumps in and interrupts. So why is the Biden campaign going after him? Why are they lying about him? Why are they putting a full court press against Byron Donalds? Well, that just explained. They don't want that message out there because then they lose, this little coalition that they've got. But secondly, because he also uses all of those skills he's got to talk about how much better things were under Donald Trump. And that's, take a look.
Republicans have been the ones who were pushing not just the 64 Civil Rights Act, but the other 4 Civil Rights Acts that occurred before 1964.
Look,
that's the history of the country. I'm not denying that.
Southern Democrats
Abby,
who
can
opposed,
I finish my point? All
again,
I'm asking is to finish my point.
On the facts here, there were Southern Democrats who opposed these civil rights bills, but
yes,
a majority of them voted for it. It was also led by a Democratic president. So you acknowledge that.
But you
Southern Democrats
cannot deny
were recruited into the Republican Party in the time period after that. So when you talk about this, you just have to acknowledge that there's been a switch happening in the two parties. It's not the same today as it was during Jim Crow. And so when you say that Black people voted conservatively, that actually doesn't really tell us anything. It just tells us that they voted for the Republican Party, which is a different thing than it is for today.
Are we also going to acknowledge that how the 64 Civil Rights Act actually got through the U.S. Senate was because of also the leadership of Senator Everett Dirksen, who was the minority Republican leader in the United States Senate at that time.
Absolutely.
You have to acknowledge that. So I think if we're going to talk about this, we have to acknowledge all of the history that went along with it.
I wasn't suggesting
and I think that's a good thing. We should have that historical conversation.
I wasn't suggesting that congressional Republicans necessarily were the stumbling block for any of this legislation. All I'm saying is that when you ask, why do Black people vote for Democrats, you have to acknowledge that that is one of the main reasons. I want to just ask one other thing, though, Congressman. It's striking to me that this conversation about the family, about who is the recipient of government benefits, about who was affected by Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, why is it that conversation only happens to Black people? When white people are on welfare, when white people are recipients of these programs too, when white people have broken families as well, why is this a message that is always directed at Black Americans?
I didn't say that at all. I think that's what you're insinuating. But let me. I
mean, that's what you did. You were trying to recruit Black voters.
Abby, if you're gonna, am I allowed to answer the question? Let me step into that. Okay, a couple of things. Yes, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, if you look at the empirical data, was destructive in part, and I said even in my comments yesterday in Philadelphia, in part to Black families throughout the United States of America. You also had some of the very damaging policies around the criminal justice system. The 94 crime bill, which was authored by Joe Biden and brought by Joe Biden. Yes, you had the war on drugs that was also very damaging to Black communities. All those things have contributed to that. And where we are today in America is trying to have the economic policies and the public policies so that all people can thrive. And if you're actually going to compare economic policies and public policies between the 45th president and the 46th president, it's without question they were better under the 45th.
Well, look, I mean,
so if you're going to examine today, hold on, but Abby, if you're going to examine today in America and where we're going as Americans, then you have to have the right set of economic policies and the right set of public policies. I mean, Abby, you've been interrupting.
Why do you invite somebody onto your show and ask them a question if you don't want to hear their answer? This is what drives people insane about cable news. I mean, she's awful. She's incredibly unimpressive. And I don't know if her job was like, or you go out there and you're going to, push back and this is going to be your viral moment. Yeah, it's a viral moment, but not to her benefit at all. Byron Donalds is an incredibly patient and got an incredible temperament here. I wouldn't be as calm as he is, constantly getting interrupted. And again, have you noticed exactly when the interruption occurred? When he started tying this back to Joe Biden's economic policies and how disastrous they are right now for Black families and Black communities. She's got a job to do right there. And it has nothing to do with getting information and finding out an answer. You may disagree with the person you're interviewing. I interview people all the time. I don't always agree with the answer they give me. But the job of an interviewer is to get the answer, not to win a debate. But all she wants to do is win a debate here. And Donalds is really handling himself brilliantly, frankly. Watch a little bit more.
Interrupted me the entire interview. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt you on the facts, Congressman. The Black unemployment rate was the lowest in American history under Joe Biden just last year. The poverty rate for Black people is the lowest under Joe Biden. So you cannot say empirically for Black people that from a financial level, things were better under Trump. There are other ways that you can make this case, but you cannot say that.
All right. This is the moment, because that was the gotcha, right? You know that everyone in the Biden campaign watching this is like, yes, she used exactly the talking points we gave her. And all of the people who maybe tuned over from MSNBC because they wanted to see this, they're screaming back at their television, yes, Queen, you did it. You finally did it. You threw it out there and you killed that talking point. So now everybody knows that Black people have never had it better than under Joe Biden. I know that because I read it right off of Joe Biden's website, right? So this is the moment. This is the moment where they finally nailed it. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for the answer? It's so good. Look at Byron. Look at Byron. Look at his face. He's so ready. Look at that face. All right, Byron, bring it.
Actually, let me respond to that, because the economic reality is that even though unemployment might be lower, wages adjusted for inflation, which is the true measure of getting ahead in America, that has been bad under Joe Biden. It was significantly better under Donald Trump because we did not have massive inflation and people were making more money, which means you're taking more money home, which means you can begin to prepare for your family, which means you can start to prepare and begin thinking about ideas of getting assets, accumulating assets, and generating wealth. Joe Biden's economy, Bidenomics, like he likes to call it, I know they don't using the word anymore, that's been destructive of so many families in our country, including Black families in our country. That is the empirical economic fact that we have to acknowledge before this election cycle.
Boom. Boom, boom, in every possible way, boom. That's the bottom line. They're making more money now. Yeah, adjusted for inflation, pal. They're making more money because the government has mandated certain wage increases in certain jurisdictions where things cost more because of all of those mandates. So you're making a little bit, let's say you're making 4% more money now, but if everything costs 10% more, how are you better off? And it's so clearly articulated, it's so clearly and calmly laid out with facts. And even she had to say, okay, well, sure. That right there, what you just saw, that's how you do it. And that's also why Byron Donalds is one of those 7 Republicans right now filling out paperwork to be properly vetted to be Donald Trump's running mate. I don't know if he's going to get it, but I can tell you this. Byron Donalds, he's going places. We're going to be talking about Byron Donalds for many, many years to come.